Come one, come all, and welcome to the Roll for Crit Review Show. I hope you're ready to feast your eyes, gasp in horror as we take a look at the Dreadful Circus. In this game, you are all playing as competing ringmasters of different circuses, and of course, you want to make sure yours have the best or possibly most horrifying attractions. So you will be bidding against each other in order to get these attractions or contracts in order to have the greatest, most entertaining, most terrifying circus.
That is exactly what it is. This is an auction and bidding game, and everyone's going to be competing to get cards that have freakish, horrifying attractions or special things that are going to boost your revenue and get more people to come to your circus than anybody else's. The way it works is that each round there are going to be two different sellers, and each seller is going to have a hand of cards, of course. Everybody will start with a hand, and you will choose one of those cards to put up for auction for everybody else to try to bid on. So the two cards will go out there, and you'll keep in mind who they belong to, and then everyone is going to get the chance to bid on one of those cards, including the sellers. They will actually have to bid on the card they didn't play. They can't bid for their own card they put up for auction. Everybody has this little wagon behind their screen along with some money and some contracts. All of this is secret from the other players, and you're going to take some amount of all of these, has to be at least one token, put it into this box secretly and place it next to the item that you want to bid on. And then once everybody has placed their objects there, whoever the sellers are get to look at these boxes and see which one they want to accept. Now there's a catch. They can't look through all of them at once. Instead, they pick one of them, and this could be depending on, players negotiating, trying to argue with them, convince them they should open theirs first or whatever it is, they have a better offer, and they get to look inside and see what it is. In this case, we've got a few coins in there. Those are worth some victory points, not bad. Now, the player has to decide, do they want to keep this or do they think there's something better in the other box? If they think this isn't good enough and they want to look in the other one, they have to accept this second offer. So in this case, that would have been a bad choice. They do actually have the choice to reject all the offers and then nobody gets the card, but you probably want to get something in return. So you have to kind of weigh the risks of which ones you open first and when you decide to stop gambling on it. The winner of it will get this card and they put it in front of them. Some of these cards are going to have effects at the end of the game or affect your scoring. Some of them with this hat symbol will have some kind of a power that occurs right away.
You're going to keep playing until there are only 3 cards left in your hand. Then, before you enter that scoring, you're actually going to take one of the 3 cards and place it in front of you. So that way, you're guaranteed a card in your hand. Afterwards, you're going to add up the score. There are many different ways for you to earn points. We're actually going to move the shield as you would show off. First one, very obvious, are coins. They usually will be worth that printed value, though there are cards that may change that. Then there are contracts. Contracts will first score based on having a different kind of number, so that will just be a flat bonus. Then you're also going to compare who has the most. So hypothetically, if someone has the most of this color, they will get more points that no one else gets. But keep in mind, there are cards that can also add to this. Finally, there are these orange cards. They're collections. You're looking for a variety of different ones. The more you have, the more points you get. Of course, do keep in mind there are plenty of other weird cards that may be going on. Some of them only trigger once. Some of them may trigger right before or after exposure, which is the scoring round. That's it. You're going to keep going, bidding on cards, trying to convince other people that they should totally look at your wagon and hopefully give you the card. And if you have the most points, you've had the best circus.
Yeah, so this is an auction game, but it's also kind of a bluffing game. Because
it is definitely a showmanship game.
Yes, very much. It's about that. It depends on your group, but it's definitely encouraged. The game really wants you to be convincing.
It works well. And not only that, that's the thing I've just starting off the bat for me, like auction games, I'm usually very bad at predicting values of things. What's weird is I feel most auction games, they're still victory points. I think many times it's usually who has the most money at the end wins and you're bidding with your money. But there's something going on. At least when we played, there would always be like, look, I won't target you with this card if you pick mine. So I felt like there were more interesting bids, or because you can also bid with these contracts. And so you could put in like a coin, but if someone is obviously trying to stack a certain color, you're like, you're giving them a contract. They may really like that.
Yeah, that is a very interesting aspect of it, especially because again, you are bidding with your points. So you have to decide, when is it worth it? Like, I kind of want to keep these Londons maybe because I have a couple and I want to try to win that majority at the end. But maybe I should just sacrifice one because it's worth it for that card. And what's also different about that is that the economy in this game is fixed, meaning other than maybe there's a couple cards in there that will let you get more contracts,
but
at least the money.
I don't remember any card that
I don't think there is. So everything that's circulating in the game is between the players. So you're bidding with what you may have the chance to get again later. It's a very interesting dynamic.
It's also, of course, when we actually get to the bids, many games, I think of there's usually the go around, keep shouting till someone, so you can almost keep track of people and be like, I'm going to bid 20 because I know you don't have 20. I mean, we've seen that in Cyclades. That's a funny thing that happens there.
Right.
But in this, because you could open this and you're like, I mean, that's pretty good. There's 2 other boxes though, which happened to me where I'm like, I think it was your box too. I looked at yours. I'm like, I'm going to look at the other 2. And you're like, are you kidding me? And of course, the other boxes each only had a coin in there.
Yeah. And this is the other thing that's very important. I don't know if we made clear about this, is when you look at those boxes, only you know what's in it. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that's interesting and was kind of tough for me, not in a bad way, but is a strategic challenge, is you don't know what someone won a bid with. So sometimes it's hard to gauge, other than what you've seen, what was bid on your cards, like what is a good bid? Is everyone else bidding a lot?
They might not have bid a lot.
Right.
They could have been, the person was just like, I don't want to risk it. So even though you put in like maybe the 3 coin and 2 contracts, which is, that's a pretty big bid. At least from my experience, if you see that, someone wants that card.
Yeah. Yeah.
They might never have seen it.
Yeah. So it means that it's very hard for, I feel like in some bidding games, like you said, you just know, oh, that person has more money than me. They're going to outbid me. It's very hard to predict that kind of thing. And there is also something that's just inherently fun, I think. It reminds me of,
oh my God.
It's just like Sheriff of Nottingham. The tactile thing of actually opening something is very entertaining.
No, I really did feel there was a lot more of those game moments when we're all laughing. Because even if you didn't know, you just, sometimes you open it and you just see the person go.
It's those decisions, man, that the make or break of deciding what to do.
And I feel because the way you have a hand of cards and you're deciding, like, for example, I might not want this card to go out. Like if I'm going contract, so I might hold it in my hand. I'm not even going to play it for the end kind of thing, but it's just, you can sort of,
you don't want anyone else to get it, maybe something like that.
But what's nice about this is, let's say I'm lacking on funds. I know if someone's really going for those great contracts, I put that out, there's a bidding war going on or something.
Right.
That, especially for these collections, that came up where someone put down a collection, 2 or 3 other people are going for collection. All of a sudden, you're like, okay, I know I'm probably going to get a good wagon here.
Yeah.
And I like that because for someone like me, like maybe I can't determine value of my own bids, but I can see what people's strategies are.
Right. You do. All the cards are public knowledge. So yeah, you will, as the game goes on, get a sense of what people like. So that's definitely a cool thing about it. Now, we have to talk about
the elephant,
yes,
the circus elephant in the room.
The circus elephant in the room. So the designer of this game, Bruno Faiduti, has posted extensively on his blog and some other places about the rules of this game. And it turns out that the version that Portal published, he disagrees fundamentally with some of the ways things score, as well as some of the card abilities, and actually has pretty extensive recommendations as to how to tweak those things. And we actually played this game according to most of his recommendations, at least in terms of swapping some of these point values, making some things worth more or less than they usually are.
And one of the things was that I think contracts, he said, were too strong. And I should mention that contracts still were strong. They're still plenty strong, as I can attest to. And I definitely felt like the scoring methods work a lot better. The cards, that is a lot harder. This is something I come across in the Arkham Horror card game where they have I forget what they call them, where like, this card should be worked like this. I'm like, that's probably more balanced. but that's so much more work.
Yeah, right. You'd have to like print something out, change the card, make everyone a reference sheet.
Like the rule change alone, I think
The score
felt,
changes.
yeah, was probably enough.
Your mileage may vary. I mean, I tried playing with his recommendations, and I think they are an improvement. But it is definitely a big downside that for most people who play this, they might have a bad experience. And, you know, you shouldn't have to look online to uncover changes that are maybe necessary for the game. But again, maybe you play this and these work fine for you. I mean, the fine folks at Portal Games put it out that way. I can't strictly say one or the other, but I do tend to defer to the designer as probably being right in this case.
Crits and misses for Dreadful Circus.
Crits. Bidding with coins and contracts, both of which are worth victory points at the end of the game, means you have to be careful about what you select and what's worth putting forward for a card. Especially those contracts, because their value can shift depending on what position you're in and even what player you're offering them to. There's a lot more to consider than just how much money you have.
I played games before where you do still bid with victory points, but in this game, it felt like it wasn't simply just that many points. There were some oddities in how many points those may or may not be worth to people, depending on what cards come out, meaning that you're gonna consider these bids a bit more carefully.
Another aspect that keeps the auctions more interesting in this game than some others is the fact that they are all hidden to the other players and, depending on what the seller chooses to look at, even to the seller. Therefore, it doesn't devolve into just who has the highest bid, but you have to put a little more effort into it, maybe make some deals or really try to be convincing to get somebody to look at what you're offering.
Going back to, like I said before, playing other bidding games, I've seen just being saying the number over and over, like 10, 12, 13. While this game, there's so much more energy of like, trust me, you want to go for my box. It's the one you want. Or I promise I'm going to look at your box first in the next round if you pick mine. Adding for so much more energy and fun table discussion during the auction phase.
For much of the game, you will be at the mercy of what other players choose to put up for auction from their hands, but you will get the chance to place a card for yourself from your own hand at the beginning and end of the game, which is a nice little way to give yourself some direction and allow you to hone your strategy even before the game begins.
This is extremely helpful as it gives you sort of a plan of attack on future auctions, but as an opposing player, you can see what your opponents are going for, meaning you know which cards in your hand are more valuable. Misses. We really enjoy the bidding system, but unfortunately it did have one flaw. We did notice that sometimes that you may not be picked not because your bids are too small, not because someone hates you in particular, but they just happen to accept a bid beforehand, even looking at yours. You could be bidding great, but sometimes you're just not picked.
For some players who are not as strong at the convincing aspect of the game or just don't feel like going through the showmanship part of it, you may find that you fall behind a little bit if other players are better at that, or you just might get bad luck. They just keep looking at somebody else's box before yours, and it can feel kind of unfair if you're in that position.
The biggest miss of all, however, is involving the rules. It's not that there's a bad rule book per se, but the designer himself has come out talking about how certain cards and certain scoring systems really should be changed. I highly suggest you take a look at them if you're into this game, because they probably will work better, or at the very least, you should see how you feel about them.
It's very disheartening to go online and see that the designer of the game that you're playing doesn't agree with some of the things in the rule book. And the fact that to have an ideal experience with this, you'd have to make some of those changes, definitely puts a damper on the fun you're going to have before you set it up on the table.
I find it weird enough, depending on the release of these videos. We recorded another game that has a game mechanic I'm not usually for that I love. This one has bidding. It's not something I tend to enjoy because I'm never good at estimating value, but I had a blast here. I think part of it is, once again, like we said, first of all, you have your pair of aces. Your starting hand, you know what to go for. Second, it seemed so much easier to predict in a way what people would want and what to bid for them, and to give something of value that was reasonable. Maybe you're giving them more points than it's worth, but you don't have to feel too bad about. And finally, of course, the showmanship was great.
Yeah, it's definitely one that I think you'll get more out of. Again, like Sheriff of Nottingham, I think they're pretty different, but they sort of both have the same vibe to them.
They do. Yeah, I agree. I think the difference is, you do get punished as sheriff if you open a bag full of all goods. The difference there is I feel once he opens the bag and it's just like that, like the air comes out with the bag with it, and you find out what happens in this. There's still tension. There's still the.
I felt that the bluffing aspect isn't as prevalent in this.
I think that's it.
It's something you can do.
It's less bluffing and more of like
convincing.
Yeah. It's I guess it's almost like, there's different charisma stats in the
because you don't even know. Maybe your bid is better than everyone else's. Like, how can you argue that it's better or worse? Like, you're not lying because you don't know.
And by the way, theme I love. The art is amazing and all the stuff, but God, is it so hard to ignore the rule thing? It's such a
it really is a huge thing.
Just that one piece of rotten fruit in there that's just hard to ignore.
Yeah, I haven't seen any announcement or response if they plan on making any kind of new edition that improves that, or even like an upgrade kit or something like that. The good news is if you're watching this right now, that means you're aware of those things. And like we said, I do think maybe removing a few cards and just swapping some score points.
The scoring thing I would definitely do because we felt like, this is working right.
I think it's simple enough to at least get it to a place where I don't feel like you need to like be drawing on cards or anything. But I wouldn't blame anyone if that scares them off. I do think that's a problem.
If anything, I know there's one card in here I like his adjust, like I would stick with right off the bat, just knowing, and that's one where you have to predict if someone has a lot of points, and it pretty much makes that more worthwhile because it could be a guess in game.
And a bunch of them are just different point values and stuff like that.
And I like that one. And I think that card's great. So to make it more rewarding, I think is a lot of fun. Overall, I still think I had a blast with this game and having the auctions and stuff. While I'm not as big a fan, you do enjoy the auction game more. How did you?
Yeah, I liked it a lot. I mean, I like all the different aspects that I think switched it up so it doesn't feel like a lot of other auction games. Honestly, it reminds me in some ways of another bidding game that you did not like, which is QE. But both of these have the element of not knowing what other people are bidding or maybe what is a good or bad bid. And I think anything in an auction game that throws some obfuscation on it so you don't know what's happening 100%, so you don't have perfect information.
Absolutely. I mean,
it's good.
One of the reasons I think of some auction games, even though I like a lot of the elements, the auction part is what I like or dislike, is because especially if someone's really good at keeping track of information, it almost becomes an Excel spreadsheet. Right. And you can sort of just be like, all right, I can bid 3 more than you. And I know what you have, and you just start losing every bid. This, even with the miss we mentioned, like where you might not get it. And it feels bad, but it's not because you feel like you're not as smart as people at the table or something. It's just luck of the draw. That's what it's great when you think, this has to be the word works. And when they turn down, you're like, what do they want? What in the world is good enough for them?
Yeah, you can't really, it's very hard to get perfect information because even if you're trying to track everything, because everybody does start with the same monies, but not the same contracts. You don't know what everybody has. You don't know like what one person actually paid for something when they pass it. So you never know exactly what everybody's working with.
And of course, I mean, we glanced over, but those top hat cards, they can really swap the game around with some of their weird effects. Like they can choose a player and they have to secretly put in a bunch of coins in there of a certain type, but you don't know if they got a bunch of silver coins or not.
Yeah.
It's just like it keeps the perfect amount of hidden information while giving you enough to know what other people want so you can bid and offer good bids or auctions.
Yeah. So unfortunately, with that one caveat that is hard to ignore, you can see even with that, we're still very enthusiastic. I think the core design here is super fun. And this is a really fun game to play. This is for a minimum of 4 players. I think even really 5 is really like where it becomes the game that it's supposed to be.
Absolutely. Because as you say, 4 players, you only get 1 bid. I think it's a lot more fun when there's multiple because you have
one
to make
seller at a time.
One seller, yes.
Yeah.
Because then, first of all, the sellers both. It's funny to see the sellers try to convince the other seller why. I mean, they're forced to, but it's like, I know you want this, so I'm just going to put it out there for you.
Yeah, there's more stuff going on. So keep that in mind. This is better for higher player counts. But other than that, if you like bidding games and you are willing to maybe do a little extra legwork to fix that scoring stuff, it's one that's definitely worth picking up. And especially if you like the aesthetic of it, it's a really cool macabre sort of look to it. It's called Dreadful Circus. And we'd love to hear from you in the comments below if maybe you have played it, if you have thoughts or opinions about those rules changes. Maybe you've played it as is written in the box and you think it's just fine. I don't know. I'd love to hear what you think about that.
Let us know in those comments down below. But until then, I'm Will.
I'm Jonathan.
And this has been a Roll for Crit review. Thank you for watching this whole video. It means a lot. If you want to help support us more, of course, you can simply just click that like and subscribe down there. You can go to our Patreon or visit our merch store. Fun fact, if you're at the high roller tier in our Patreon, you actually get a discount for some of the awesome merch we have in our store, so check both out.